Today I want to talk about having just a little fun when you're cooking. We're going to make a spaghetti meat sauce, and you could freeze this sauce. You do not have to can it. But you know, if you water bath can, you have to be much more careful following the recipes exactly, being careful of the acid content, etc. And I think pressure canning gives you a little more leeway. At least it does for me. I take a little more leeway. And I am going to can up this spaghetti sauce, but the way I'm doing it is really not completely following a recipe. I'm doing it more by taste because that's the way I cook, so that's the way I'm going to pressure can. So come along with me today. We're going to make a great spaghetti meat sauce. Today I went out in the garden and I picked these lovely, lovely tomatoes. Isn't that beautiful? And I'm going to can up a rather small batch for what I usually can, spaghetti meat sauce. Now, probably next week I'll get bushels of tomatoes and can them up because I myself don't grow enough. But for those that I do grow, I like making different batches of sauce or other tomato products. Now, one of the things I try to do to adjust a recipe I have is figure out how many pounds of tomatoes I have. So for this recipe, I have a little over 15 pounds of tomatoes, and that just kind of helps me adjust what I'm making. Now, reality is, I use the recipe only as a guide. It is by taste that I decide if the sauce is ready, or do I need to include a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that. So first you're going to want to take your tomato and core it. It's pretty easy, just take out the center. And on the other side's fine, otherwise sometimes I take that out too. Now, if you are not using a steam juicer, you're going to want to cut this in eighths. It's up to you if you want to remove the skin or not. To me, the skin has a lot of nutrients, so I keep it in. But then you are going to have to cook it for some time until most of the water absorbed and you end up more with sauce. My way, a lot easier, but you do have to have a steam juicer. So after coring them, this is what you need to do. You're just going to wash all your tomatoes really well. And that's really important because you don't want any sand or dirt in your sauce. And I'm just putting them in another thing. So make sure you do that and wash them well. I'm not going to throw these tomato cores away because my chickens love them. So here's the chickens getting their treat. They just love tomatoes, which is a good reason why you don't allow chickens in your garden, because they will definitely not just eat your greens, but your tomatoes too. Enjoy, girls. If you're using a steam juicer, you want to fill it with water, and we have to wait until it becomes boiling to do the next part. If you're not using the steam juicer, remember, cut your tomatoes up in eighths and start cooking them down. Or if you have a food mill, you can also use that. Well, our water is really boiling now. So now we have to add the tiers. That's T-I-E-R-S. So now we're going to put the top tier in. And I'm going to add all the tomatoes. Well, I might not be adding all of them because they might not all fit. We'll see here. The nice thing is I can put these in. It's going to take about an hour, but I can do other things while this is condensing. I might not get all of these in right now, but I'll come back in a little bit and some of this will have, as I say, smooshed or smushed down, and I can probably put in more. I'll be back in about an hour. So we'll put the lid on here and on nice and secure. And I have about 3 tomatoes I want to still fit in there, and I think I'll be able to after this cooks for a little bit. Right now I'm going to put the timer on for 60 minutes. The hour is up, so I've taken the tomatoes out of the steam juicer, and now we're going to use our immersion blender. And I know you don't want to hear this, so I'll be back when this is done. Now you want to brown your meat. You can use hamburger if you like, pork sausage, or in my case I'm using Italian sausage. Whatever you like. I feel that pressure canning takes a lot of the flavor out of the meat, so I prefer something a little bit spicy, so I like the Italian sausage in it. But use whatever you like. And we're just going to brown it, and we'll be back when we're done. Well, our meat is brown now, and we're going to transfer it to a bowl, and then we'll continue. Now we want to cook our onions, and I have 2 big onions, and I have to admit, I didn't slice up my own garlic. It's a jar of minced garlic. And to that, we're going to add 2 red peppers and 1 green pepper diced up. We're going to cook this a little. And there still is a little lovely grease, whatever you want to call it, from the sausage. I think I'll add just a little oil to this though. I'm going to add a little, here, it's a little olive oil. And now we're just going to cook this a short, just kind of soften it, because believe me, it cooks long enough when it's in the pressure canner. I'll be back when I think it's soft enough. So we now have this pretty confetti here, red, green, and white, and it's cooked down a bit. So now we're going to the next step. I've dumped our red and green pepper and onions and garlic in with the tomatoes. Now we're going to blend that. And again, I'll be back when I'm done so you don't have to listen to this. So I've poured everything into a bigger pot. And now we want to add our meat back. Stir it, which you can't see, but there isn't much room here for the camera. But now we're going to go into the fun part. We're going to add certain ingredients, and we're going to do it by taste until we get what we want. So here it goes. So here's 1 tablespoon basil. Here's 1, 2 tablespoons of Italian seasoning. Mix this up. Okay. Now let's put 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire in it. It's such a fun word to say, Worcestershire. I don't say it right. About 1/4 cup brown sugar. And a tablespoon of red pepper. Just gonna do a little taste test. Maybe just a little more sugar. I saw one site that puts a little soy sauce in. See how that does to the flavor. I know, Asian spice with a Italian sauce, but let's see. Another little taste test. I'd say perfect. Maybe just a little more heat than some of my family members were like, so maybe I should have put maybe a 1/2 teaspoon to 3/4 teaspoon of the red pepper flakes. But this is the way my husband and I like it. So I think it's ready to can. We just have to fill up our jars. You can see it's nice and thick. Oh, it smells good too. And typical of my family, my husband said, well, I want some now. Don't can it all. It's like, I need to can when nobody's home, so, and keep it in the jars for a while. This recipe would have made 5 quarts, but like I said, my husband said it smells good. I'd like to have it now for dinner, so 1 quart is being saved for dinner. I want your water in your pressure canner to be at least warm, if not hot, because you're putting hot jars in it. Now, I already have some water in here. I'm adding a little vinegar because I have hard water. Now I'm adding the rest of the water. we'll let that warm up before we put the jars in it. Now, I have to state, this recipe is for pressure canning. You have meat in it. There is no lemon juice in it to make sure that the acidity of the tomatoes is correct for water bath canning. So please, please use a pressure canner. Do not water bath can this recipe. You want to check for any air bubbles. Always want to make sure to wipe them to make sure there's nothing on top so you don't get a good seal. And now it's time to put on your lids. And I still do warm up my lids. That's the way I always did it, so I still do. They say you don't have to. And you're going to put your lids on, finger tight. All your hard work is done. Just make sure you have some oil so your cover doesn't get stuck on here. Then put your cover on. Okay, you always line it up right here. Now just screw on your screws, I guess. And we're gonna wait till we get some steam coming out of there. Be back when that happens. My hair is kind of messed up, but hey, I'm canning and it's hot in the kitchen. Anyway, I always have these directions that I remind myself of. You know, it says, make sure your rim is oiled. Check your vent for any blockage, which I did and I forgot to film. Place 2.5 inches of water with some vinegar. Place jars and canner and tightly screw on top. And for me, I set my burner right around the 8th setting. And once the steam begins, venting time for 10 minutes. Place 10 pound of pressure, which is what it is for my area, after the vent expires for 10 minutes. And then once the 10 pound pressure is reached, I begin timing. And then I have down here for all the times, depending if it's meat, vegetables, or whatever. Anyway, handy guide. I suggest that you make up one for your canner, no matter how many years you've been canning. It's just good to keep a reminder, because sometimes when you're in a rush, you might forget a step. So we've had nice steam coming from here for 10 minutes. Now we're going to put on the weight. Now we're going to wait until this gauge gets up to 10. Then we'll start counting. Well, you can see, put the gauge on. Now, because it's quartz, I'm canning it for 90 minutes. If it was pint, it would be only 75 minutes. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Here's a picture of me eating what's left over because, like I said, I would have had 5 quarts, but no, my husband had to have some because he smelt it cooking, and it was delicious. Well, we've got 4 beautiful quarts. It's going to go in the pantry, and whenever I need a quick supper, it's right there and it's right ready, and it has a lot of the goodness from my summer garden. So I encourage you, freeze this recipe, make it fresh, or pressure can it. This is Prepper Potpourri saying, please subscribe, share the knowledge, and as always, thank you so much for your support. Thumbs up if you like this video.